Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 10-Minute Sea Discussion podcast, where I, Nora, your host, will break some exciting news from Southeast Asia, a small but fast-growing region in the Asian continent. Now, let's stream into our ninth episode, ESG Mandate, How SMEs Can Adapt Their Venture to the New Norm. For today's episode, it's my great honor to have the participation of our very first guest today coming to the show, Mr. Mickaël Driol, the CEO of Mecom Partners. Hi, Michael. How are you today?
Very good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Okay, so Michael, as a warm-up for our discussion, let's start small first. ESG is a term that is quite familiar with ASEAN markets, I think for the last decade, and the mandate of this model has gotten more intense recently as a part of regional efforts towards the net zero of the 2040s to 2050s. So talking about the place where you're currently located in, that is Vietnam, right? Based on your team's observation, what is the current implementation rate of the ESG mandate across domestic sectors? Whether it is imposed on our industries or only on a few ones? And have there been any significant changes in the local regulatory framework?
Well, Vietnam is now entering what I would describe as the second chapter of its modernization story. The chapter where sustainability, digitalization, and credibility becomes the real growth drivers. Um, Over the past 10 years, the country has achieved what few developing economies could. Sustained GDP growth above 6%, manufacturing exports worth over 350 billions of dollars, and deep integration into 17 free trade agreements. But that growth model, based on low-cost labor and global supply chains, is now facing a structural turning point. ESG, or environmental, social, and governance standards, are becoming the new operating system for competitiveness. So where does Vietnam stand today? If I take a data-driven view, I would say the ESG implementation rate remains modest, but accelerating fast. Based on Mekong Partners field analysis across more than 200 companies, around 30-35% of large Vietnamese enterprises, mainly in manufacturing, finance, and energy, have begun implementing ESG in some form. These companies either publish sustainability reports, adopt renewable energy, or integrate social compliance standards for exports. You see it clearly in the apparel and electronic sectors, where buyers from the EU or US now require due diligence audits, carbon accounting, and worker safety documentation. However, among the SME segment, which makes up 97% of Vietnam's private sector, fewer than 10% have formal ESG systems in place. Most of them are aware of ESG but don't know how to translate it into business value. For many, the term remains academic. They hear it from banks or international partners, but daily survival pressures like cash flow, um, labor retention, and input costs dominate the agenda. So now when we talk about whether ESG is a national mandate or still a voluntary concept, the truth lies in between. ESG is not yet a fully enforced legal requirement, but it is being strategically embedded across multiple policy layers. For example, the State Bank of Vietnam has issued guidance for green credit, requiring banks to classify loans by ESG-related risks. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, is preparing the framework for a national carbon market under Decree 062/2022, expected to be operational by 2028. And several provinces like Binh Duong and Trang Ninh are piloting green industrial zones to test ESG integration in manufacturing clusters. So they are not isolated policies. They are part of a long-term vision to make Vietnam a regional leader in sustainable production. The
Mm.
most visible progress is in the export-linked sectors. The EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, and the CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, are already pushing Vietnamese suppliers to track emissions and trace raw materials. Similarly, Japanese and Korean investors who represent more than $80 billion in cumulative FDI now require local partners to comply with the global sustainability standards. But let's be honest, implementation is not yet consistent. Vietnam is still building its ESG ecosystem. Auditors, data providers, training institutions, and digital reporting platforms. Compared to Singapore or Malaysia, Vietnam lags slightly in policy coordination and financing instruments. Yet it is ahead of Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines in digital readiness and industrial agility. So the direction is right. Vietnam is not trying to copy Western ESG models. It's adapting them to its development stage, focusing on industrial energy efficiency, circular manufacturing, and supply chain traceability. The country's ESG transition is not about image, it's about market access and risk mitigation.
Mm.
And here's a key insight. ESG in Vietnam will not be driven by regulation alone. It will be driven by trade, finance, and reputation.
Mm.
The government is creating the framework, but it's the pressure from global buyers and lenders that will make ESG non-negotiable. In short, ESG in Vietnam is moving from awareness to application, not perfect yet, but clearly irreversible.
Mm. Okay, a side question from me, because you already mentioned that Vietnam is ahead Indonesia, Philippines, but still behind Malaysia and Singapore. At the
Yeah.
same time, the implementation is yet to be consistent, we would say. But right now, as you said, Vietnam is on the right track. If you can make an evaluation, how long will it take for Vietnam to have a more structural ESG ecosystem? Will it take more years, like 5 or 10 years, or it will be fewer than that?
Well, yeah, it all depends on the support they may receive from FDI and from external parties as well, coming from abroad and trying to help through agencies, uh, the Vietnamese government. So I would believe that it will take at least 20 years in order for results to appear.
Okay.
But anyway, like I said, Vietnam is moving from awareness to application, so it's on the good way so far.
Mm. Okay, so may I ask a bit about what are the most frequently asked questions that Mekong partners, your company, often receive
Yeah.
from business clients when it comes to ESG initiatives? Because we can see it in Vietnam is still relatively newly introduced notion to the businesses. And which company scales are regularly seeking help from your company? And in general, what advice or solutions do Mekong partners often give to them?
When Vietnamese executives or founders approach Mekong Partners, my company, about ESG, the questions often reveal where the market really is on the maturity curve. They usually fall into three big categories. One is meaning, the second one is method, and the third
Mm.
one is money. So the first question is always, what does ESG really mean for us?
Mm.
There is still a lot of confusion between ESG, CSR, and compliance. Many firms think ESG is a new type of audit or foreign reporting standard. We start by reframing it. ESG is not a report, it's a
Mm.
management system. It's about how you make decisions, manage resources, and communicate trust. Once clients realize ESG is a business model, not just a policy checklist, the discussion shifts from cost to opportunity. So we give practical examples for logistics company. ESG means optimizing routes to cut fuel costs and carbon emissions. For a textile factory, it means reducing water use, recycling wastewater, or switching to solar. ESG is not an abstract label, it's operational excellence that pays back over time. And the second question is, where do we start? Vietnamese entrepreneurs are, I would say, pragmatic from the experience I have with them. They don't want theory, they want steps. We tell them start with governance. It's always G before E and S. Governance doesn't require big budgets, it requires structure. Assigning responsibility, recording actions, tracking performance. Even a small family-run business can implement governance by using simple reporting templates and internal codes of conduct. Once the governance foundation is set, you can expand into environmental and social actions. And the third question, and the toughest one so far, is what the return on investment, the ROI? Well, then we answer with data. According to IFC, SMEs with ESG credential enjoy about 15-25% easier access to credit and up to 20% higher customer retention. In our own portfolio, companies that improved ESG transparency have seen direct export gains. For instance, one of my clients, a Mekong partner located in Binh Duong, it's a wooden furniture producer, implemented basic waste tracking and renewable sourcing. Within a year, it secured a multi-year contract with a European retailer and reduced energy costs by 11%. ESG turned from compliance to competitiveness. So in terms of company profiles, our clients range from small manufacturers with 100 workers to large conglomerates employing thousands. The SMEs seek help to meet buyer audits and or get green financing. The big firms aim to embed ESG into board strategy and investor communications. So our role is to translate ESG into business language, measurable, local, and profitable. We help companies set realistic baselines, no greenwashing, no jargon. We implement gradual transformation. So the message we give to all is simple. ESG isn't a burden. It's an investment in resilience. The sooner you start, the cheaper it becomes.
Okay. Actually, when you said the sooner you start it, the cheaper it becomes. But
Yeah.
let's move into a bigger picture, a macro
Mhm.
setting outside Vietnam. So the online market in ASEAN is extremely vibrant, right? There are
Yeah.
platforms like Shopee, Lazada, and on social media like Facebook, Instagram, selling and buying activities are also very vibrant. And
Mhm.
most ventures utilize these spaces for trade belong to the micro business category. So they may only have the scale of self-sustaining, where operations limited to small teams or even individuals, and they rely mainly on online platforms without significant like physical presence or capital investment. So in
Right.
this case, when you say we start earlier, it's cheaper. So will it be feasible for these kind of micro business to follow the G first formula? Because you can see they may not have enough capacity or capital to really transform, to really build a good structure for their business.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that comes to the question actually how SMEs can comply with ESG despite limited resources, right?
Yes.
So, well, let's be honest. Um, ESG compliance is not easy for SMEs in Vietnam, for example, abroad, here, wherever. They operate with thin margins, face tight credit, and often lack skilled managers. So, but that's also why ESG matters so much. When a small business organizes itself around efficiency, transparency, and trust, it gains stability that big firms often take for granted. We approach this challenge with what I call progressive compliance, meaning you build capability in steps, not all at once. So step one, governance first. Without governance, nothing else works. Governance is not bureaucracy, it's discipline. SMEs should start by assigning ESG roles, keeping digital records, and ensuring management accountability. Even small actions like documenting supplier contracts, safety audits, and waste management practices create like trust with partners and banks. Then we have step two, which is prioritize low cost, high impact environmental measures. In Vietnam, energy and water are the biggest cost items for manufacturers. So installing metering systems, LED lighting, or heat recovery units can reduce consumptions by 10-20% with minimal investments. That's both sustainable and profitable. Then step three, which would be the strengthen the social pillar. Many SMEs underestimated the value of labor standards, but buyers and investors now monitor fair wages, worker health, and gender balance as well. So improving those doesn't cost much, but can dramatically enhance your company's image and retention rate. The biggest misconception is that ESG is about perfection. It's not. Global buyers understand that SMEs in emerging markets cannot meet every standard immediately. So what they want is proof of progress, even basic documentations of improvements, photos, reports, data logs can unlock new contracts and financing. Vietnamese SMEs should see ESG as a journey, not a checklist. Start with what's material to your business, not everything at once. For a logistics company, focus on fuel and safety. For agriculture, focus on waste and labor. For tech, focus on governance and data privacy. And Mekong partners, we often tell SMEs, don't wait for regulations. Use ESG to differentiate yourself. Once you embed governance, you can access green finance programs from the banks, BIDV, ADB, or IFC. And that opens capital that would otherwise be inaccessible. In a few years, ESG will no longer be optional. Those who start early will lead, not follow.
Okay, so at the bottom line, Michael, actually, I'm very impressed by what you said just now. Use ESG to differentiate yourself. So sooner or later, we know ESG will be a norm in many markets. Do you have any advice regarding the compliance for potential entrepreneurs who have plans to build their ventures in the coming years? Because they haven't stepped into the market yet, so I think they are still quite puzzled with ESG, with CSR, with like lots of terms and notions. So what is your advice to them?
For young entrepreneurs planning to build businesses in Vietnam today, my advice is, well, simple and strategic. Design your company for the world you're entering, not the world that existed before. The next decade of global business will be shaped by three forces: sustainability, digital transparency, and capital credibility. ESG sits at the intersection of all three. And whether you're in tech, manufacturing, logistics, or agri-food, the way you manage environmental impact, labor, and governance will define your access to funding, partnerships, and markets. So, my first piece of advice, embed governance from day one. Don't wait until you are big to formalize it. Keep transparent records, implement digital accounting, and assign compliance rules early. Good governance is like a safety net. It allows you to grow without losing control. Second, see sustainability as efficiency. Every kilowatt saved, every liter of water recycled, every kilometer optimized is money earned. So in Vietnam, where energy costs are rising and climate risks are real, efficiency is your best ESG investment. And third, build trust as capital. The most valuable currency for Vietnamese startups will be credibility. With customers, with investors, with regulators, ESG helps build that trust. It shows you're reliable, responsible, and ready for global collaborations. And finally, think regional from the start. Vietnam is not an isolated market. It's part of the Asian bloc, which together represents 650 million consumers, and some of the fastest growing supply chains in the world. So build a company that can scale beyond borders. If you combine those principles, governance, efficiency, trust, and scale, ESG stops being a regulation and becomes your competitive edge. So the world is shifting from low cost to low risk production, and Vietnam is perfectly positioned to lead that shift. So the entrepreneurs who align early will define the country's next chapter of growth.
Okay. Yes. Use ESG to differentiate yourself. Start early. Don't wait until you are bigger.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, Michael, that was a really lengthy but surely amazing chat with you. It was a great honor to have you here with me today. Thank you so much for the insights given to the audience. I hope that we'll have more chances to talk again and wish you all the best to come. Thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye, Nora.
So that's the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it and found the news interesting. For your convenient reference to further details of the news I mentioned, please find the links to my blog page in the description, where I have compiled all the related information. If you have any questions, or you want to discuss more on what I shared today, please leave your comments below. I would love to talk to each of you more as well. You can search for more episodes of this 10-Minute C Discussion podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and my own blog page. Thank you for listening to today's episode all the way to the end. And I hope to see you again in my next episode of 10-Minute C Discussion, which will be released soon. Once again, this is Nora, your host. Thank you so much and goodbye.